I tend to see things in visuals too, very symbolically. And what I saw when you asked this question about what is different from a generation perhaps ago, is I see a web, and all the spokes of the web is connecting to the religion that is flailing, and politics and government and money and all these things that are held in the threads by this web. And at the center of the web there's the void. There's that present moment anchor part of that as a global thing I'm looking at, that people haven't been taught or inspired or remembered to look at their shadow. And this is why I think we've been pushed to the edge of the brink, because we're not looking at the very core of that void, or that the part of us, the shadow part of us that we have deemed to be judgeful, to be judged, or we've judged it, and we've pushed it so far down away from ourselves that it's coming up like that oil from the oil spill from the Gulf. We've pushed it so far down that it's pushing it up again for us to see. And I personally, as a shamanic practitioner, I really always return people back to that part of themselves that they've been afraid of. And once they get to really sit in silence in the present moment with that thing that they've judged or felt afraid of, it's not anything to be afraid of. It's actually very peaceful and very beautiful and very silent in that shadow, in that darkness. So I feel that one of the major causations of this split that's been happening and where we've come to is because a lot of people have been running from that shadow part of themselves. So
I think another kind of big thing going on now that's different than ever is the 2012 thing. And I think it's been distorted by the media to scare a lot of people. And I think it's a really positive shift in consciousness that's happening. But like I see, like our son's 25, our kids his age are kind of in a void of, is everything going to be over, in a year or two? And what do I do with my life in the meantime? So I see a bunch of that generation kind of going off into their bucket list already, just living as lively as they can right now.
It is. He's in New Zealand having a great time. Exactly.
Well, and that's forcing you to go into the present moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it's part of the shift.
Yeah.
Yes, it is, absolutely.
Like not living for the future and not living for money and for the corporate job. And I think that's a big shift.
I just want to add something to that, though, because when people hear, present moment, they start thinking, well, then I don't have to worry about the future. But it doesn't mean to just blow the future off, because it can look like that. For me, it did. And so what it really means is don't spend my entire day in the future. Set aside some time for planning, whatever that may be, thinking about, memories, having memories, or planning the future. But the majority of the moments should be in the moment. Majority of my activity and my awareness is in this moment. But so I just want to say that because sometimes I can be really in the present moment and not plan for anything, and that can look kind of messy on the other, when that moment comes up, when the rent's not paid or my laundry isn't done, it's like,
I have to attend to third dimensional things, but I do think there's a deeper trust, that you're being guided. And that it's not about planning everything out like it used to be, your whole education and then career path and family and cars and home, and that's gone.
Yeah, it's like material is falling apart, but it's not a bad thing. It's because spirit is impinging itself. The oneness is kind of saying it's time. It's time for us to become conscious and to start living from the guidance, from the oneness, from the support that's here, from the souls that we've been nurturing, and it's impinging itself. And I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think in a way this is a kind of group gathering where it feels like the planet needs more of a vision of the goodness of this, because it's been inundated with the fear-based aspect of everything's going to fall apart. like that movie 2012 where everything's falling apart. You know, it's like, yeah, you know, and what's coming to take its place is what we've all been yearning for anyway. So, I think informing reality with a positive vision feels really important right now.
I just want to speak back to the shadow that Malia was talking about, because as a Tantra teacher, I work a lot with people around their sexuality, and there's a lot of still shame, guilt, and fear around sexuality, even in the 21st century. And when people are starting to dive into getting in touch with their feelings around their sexuality, their sexual relationship, needs that they have, maybe they've never expressed, a lot of those kind of shadow things start to come up, the fear, the shame, the guilt, and that is scary for people. And often in the past, our tendency is to just, well, I just won't look at that, I'll sweep it under the carpet. And especially, I think, for a lot of spiritual people, a lot of new agey people, they're living from here up, and it's like nothing below the waist is alive. And when we don't deal with things, that's when they have to, to get our attention, they just have to get louder. The voice gets louder, the actions get louder. And I think a lot of what's happening in the world today is coming, like a lot of the stuff around the priests and the Catholic Church and all the child molestation, all that is coming up because it hasn't been addressed. These kind of things come up because they haven't been addressed. And so as we reclaim all the parts of ourselves, both the beautiful, loving parts, and also those parts that are angry or hurt or afraid, we really are claiming all of our aliveness. And in shamanism, that's one thing when we do soul retrieval, we're bringing back all the parts of ourselves so we can be fully in our divinity and fully in our spirit self, however you want to call that. But it's really being willing to reclaim all the parts of ourselves. And I think that is what that vision can come from. When we reclaim all of who we are and we're not denying, we're not an us and a them. To me, it goes back to 9/11 again, which was a big wake-up call for me spiritually, was as long as we have terrorists out there that are the bad people, instead of looking at the terrorists in here, we're going to have that split. And when we can recognize we're all one and we all have both the hero and the terrorist within, and that we can love all the parts of ourselves, then we can really create a world based on love instead of fear and suffering. And